Hi there, thanks for joining us right here on a very special episode of The Nation. I'm Jessie Chahel. Last month, just about 3 weeks ago, our nation was changed forever. A point in time that will forever be ingrained in our hearts and minds. A historic moment for all Malaysians, particularly for those who chose to participate in what was known as the mother of all elections, the GE14. But that didn't happen overnight. Blood, sweat, tears for particularly one person who has seen through the challenges it took, has stood the many tests of time, yet strong-willed and passionate, perhaps now more than ever before. A daughter of Reformation, amongst many other titles, joins us today to talk about her views, visions and vigour for a better nation. YB Nurul Izzah Anwar joins us today. Welcome to the studios. Thanks for being here. You look ravishing, and beneath all that beauty and brains lies a lioness we've seen unleashed. Congratulations on the big historical win. I think that I have to say, first and foremost, it's been years of struggle and fight and unwavering strength from your end, courage as well, if nothing else. What if you have said before that this is the win for the people?
Yeah.
Do you feel that this is also a personal feat for you and your family?
Well, you know, for me, it has always been a struggle that goes beyond our family or our personal agenda, because the freedom of the freeing of Anwar Ibrahim was not by virtue of him being our father. It was because it was an injustice that was committed against an innocent man. And his freedom alone was not sufficient to ensure that no other victimization of Malaysians take place.
That's right.
So for me, quite of a balance. You know, of course, as a family, having him return to the fold, having his conviction quashed, because the pardon was made on based on a miscarriage of justice. Now that was just momentous. I mean, I think, you know, I've been trying so hard, you know, to fight alongside and also ensure that his innocence, you know, and that we remain vindicated. So that having that was, yeah, still yes, a sense of true personal victory, but you know, it goes beyond the issue of a family relationship or love. It goes at the heart of, you know, defending justice.
That's right. Oh, for sure, there are bigger issues at hand, but the reality, and in essence, you were robbed of your father for about 11 years or so. You know, even your own daughter had to go to prison to visit her grandfather.
Yeah, Papato.
Yeah. How do you find that sense of forgiveness for the very person who now is the captain of the coalition, who once was a political enemy?
I had presented a TEDx talk from Monash University. It was called From Enemy to Valentines.
Right.
I just, it narrates my journey of basically, you know, from the very beginning, I was angry and I hated the actions, the victimization, the emasculation of democratic institutions in this country. But, you know, I didn't want to personalize it because, remember, we offered ourselves as public servants. We offered ourselves as candidates for the elections. So having done that, you can't go into the elections or going wanting to service the people by having a huge chip on your shoulder. So that helped me calibrate what is necessary to prioritize Malaysia's agenda. What do we need to do to ensure that we coalesce all these forces, especially when Tun Mahathir left UMNO, set up a new political party, and then wanted to join the opposition and embrace the reform agenda. So I think it really makes up for a very compelling argument and case, which I could not ignore, unfortunately. I could not just follow my heart and my emotions. I had to do the right thing. So, you know, for me in life, it's about doing the right thing. So once you're clear on having that moral compass, it's relatively easier to breathe.
That's right. Well, doing the right thing is never the easier path. It's always an uphill task, isn't it? Challenges, I'm sure you know very well. But what part do you see yourself playing within all of this, with your parents being in the forefront, Mom as Deputy Prime Minister and Women's Affairs Minister?
I know, such a mouthful.
And Dad as a famous political leader loved by so many.
Yeah.
Are you afraid that this might lead to some people saying it could be a political family dynasty in the making?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm glad then that my father famously declared that Izzah will not be part of the cabinet on CNN.
Was there any hope?
No, honestly, you know, I'm very happy with one thing, because around the very beginning, I felt even as a mere, you know, citizen, I had the power. You know, at the age of 17, if you decided to say no to an authoritative regime, then you could do it, right? Because fear is what you make of it. So for me, I resolved within myself not to allow fear to dictate my decisions, okay? So now, of course, you know, I have to really focus on my role as a Member of Parliament for Permatang Pau. I think, you know, whatever advice or feedback I give is in my capacity, but we have to also be mindful of the delicacies and the ethical dimensions when it comes to family relations. But I think the very definition of nepotism is also giving a particular position, not based on merit, and it's also definitely based on the relationship you have. So, Alhamdulillah, my conscience is clear, and I'm a vice president of the party, and I will do my best to ensure that the reform agenda and our manifesto
That's right here.
is going to be fulfilled.
That's right. We, of course, hoping and praying that every single thing that has been said
Every
and
single
pledged
thing. I like it when you put it
just slip it in there. But you did say that this book was purposely kept to a minimum because it's something people will pick up and read, and rightly so. I've been walking around with this for a couple of days now.
Thank you.
But what are some of your prime concerns, if not ideas, in addressing some of the very critical issues being faced by the nation at this moment? We know that there is a 100-day timeline.
Yes.
But we also know that, you know, things that have been done over 6 decades is not going to be easy to be undone in 100 days.
You want to dismantle a system that's been put in place to ensure that authority and power rests in the office of the Prime Minister, the executive's hands, will not be easy. There's a culture of fear permeating throughout society, throughout the government agencies, and you see this. It's being replicated, being mentioned by the head of SPRM, MACC himself. So yeah, but I do believe never underestimate the power of political will. Never underestimate that, you know, if you have committed leaders and an agenda and the people who are going to basically keep the leaders in check, then you have the right ingredients for a better nation. Now, with regards to my fears, I believe, you know, Alhamdulillah, today is the zero-rated GST day.
That's right. I was coming to that 1st of June 2018, as promised.
As promised. Well, yeah, and I remember like demonstrating on the 1st of May 2014. Gosh, you know, it was a very hot day.
4 years ago.
4 years ago, you know, on the hot sun, you know, risking arrest, trying to avoid the police.
Did you ever think that this day would happen? Although you were fighting for it tooth and nail.
Yeah. I would say I'm an optimist, but no. It's nothing short of a miracle.
What was it like on the 9th of May 2018 when you realized victory is yours?
Well, I was with my son. Usually I don't bring him, but he's 9 now. So I said, you know, let's go to the hall to receive our electoral results for Permatang Pau. And he says, what is this? I used the occasion to explain to him what democracy meant, what elections meant, and what contesting could spell out for the future of, you know, of him, for his future, for the future generations. So it was quite nice. It was very like my moment with my son, and I think he kept asking many questions, and he kept following the results. Like, Mama, because he's an avid follower of Arsenal's highs and many lows. So and I think that when the time came, I'm like, oh my goodness, we really made it at the federal level, because you just gauged from the wins at the Sarawak parliamentary seats. When you get that, you know it's almost a home run. I had to rush back by midnight. They couldn't tabulate completely Permatang Pau, but I rushed back. Safia on my right side, Harith on my left side in the car, and we arrived home by 4 in the morning. So let's just say it was a very tiring, surreal experience.
Absolutely. That day, I think many Malaysians, me included, hardly had much rest. It was like, how can we sleep? What's happening here? But as you mentioned, with your children as well as the children of the nation, the future generation, and we talk about youth as well. They made up a majority of the electoral roll.
41%.
41%. Well, not the majority, but 41% out of the almost 15 million registered voters. Many of them too were first-time voters. And of course, they largely contributed to the coalition's success. How does the government now plan to keep relevant amongst the youth and really rope them in at every level?
Talk about half of the voting population between 21 to 39.
Yeah.
And they had so much at stake. I mean, they faced a future that could be spelled out through unemployment, the fact that they couldn't get sufficient jobs to meet their skill set. A home or even owning a car, it's a scary prospect.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it propelled them to sort of embrace change. And we had from the very beginning offered Tawaran Anak Muda, our youth manifesto. And we addressed the key issues, whether it's through the 1 million jobs for those and having a cap at 2,500 ringgit and above. We wanted to sort of meaningfully allow them to earn a living wage, a meaningful wage. Also other kinds of offerings. But I think more importantly, most of our candidates are young candidates.
Yeah.
The fact that, we also had a transition of this generation that did not remember the 13th May 1969 incident. It's like you cross the Rubicon. You cross the racial Rubicon because people are saying, hey, transitions can take place without even a drop of blood, and Malaysia did it.
But they also have sort of gone through that brunt of, the cost of living issues and many other issues that follow and had really plagued Malaysians.
But that's good because it's about their own future. So they're taking a stake. But if you're just allowing fear mongering, you're allowing this, the specter of the racial riots. Now, I think that's a cop-out. That's cowardly. But if you address the concerns and what Pakatan can offer and how Selangor and Penang has meaningfully become this alternative state governments that have been successful, that's fine. Then you can address and attack and criticize based on policies.
But it seems after a long time now that the power really lies with the people, that they are almost
82% came out and voted.
In control here. How would you handle that kind of pressure?
It is not easy. As you know, social media has factored in so hugely in our lives. Like, you're really...
Which up till now has been a good thing for your...
It's a double-edged sword. From the very beginning. I think Hanayo mentioned this as well, the former speaker for Selangor State Assembly. You can't really control what comes in, right? I mean, it could be meaningful and constructive criticism. It could also be insults hurled at you. But this is the new normal.
The present government has been likened to, of course, a newborn baby or toddler with many milestones yet to be met. It's still quite steady in its tracks so far. I think we're on day 23, if I'm not mistaken. But
oh my God,
however,
it's been 20 days.
You're only as strong as your weakest link, they say, and it appears that the government is a little bit fragile still. How does Pakatan Harapan plan on keeping themselves united, efficient, stable within the coalition, and how are you going to ensure that you don't get to the point where you're splitting hairs and having internal conflicts, and especially in a fast-paced climate like that, where things are so transparent?
Well, I think sometimes it's also part and parcel of our historic legacy. It's such a bottled-up environment. In Parliament, it's so opaque. You get no answers from ministers. Ministers are even fearful of lying or even contradicting their answers.
But that's going to change now.
Because it's changed, so sometimes there is a certain degree of overcompensating. I think psychologically speaking, in this constructive, new Malaysia, there will be some hits and misses. And I think we should always exercise some degree of compassion and patience.
But it seems like the people, while they voted in and they have hope they also may be a little bit impatient. They want to see changes. They want to see you walk your talk, and they want to see results.
But isn't it good? This is an era where people are responsible, people are vocal, and the government should be fearful of the rakyat. I think it's an important development, because people sometimes want to be members of parliament. They think it's some glamorous job, but guess what? You're a public servant.
That's right.
You have to basically fulfill your responsibilities. I mean, I think it's an important reminder, right? You teach children, what do you want to become a politician? What is it for? Political patronage? Is it for projects? You're going to become a politician, you're going to become a member of parliament, you're going to become a minister, because you have to fulfill the aspirations of the people. And I think that kind of fear should be struck deep within the hearts of many people.
But keeping the trust of the people to keep believing that, yes, we have made the right choice, that internal bickering and some unorganization may not reflect.
I think, to be fair, it's been relatively stable. I mean, there has been dissent, and I think even Prime Minister Tun Mahathir, to his credit, he took the response and the criticism with regards to the double portfolio of the Prime Minister in his stead. I think it's important, because once you believe that your government deserves your 101% backing, then you cannot in good conscience call yourself a working democracy. Look at whether it's in the UK and various political magazines, the bickering between the Lib Dems and the Conservatives. It happens on almost a daily basis previously, and the criticisms fielded against the Prime Minister. I think, of course, you want to manage it carefully. I understand your question. Of course, some parts is to ensure you support the government, to make sure they are given due in time to fulfill their promises. And that, I feel, goes back to the heart of ethical reflection, ethical allowance to raise differences, but in a proper manner.
With that in mind, in your opinion, from your point of view, inside looking out, how do you think the government has done so far?
Today there was the Presidential Council meeting amongst the top leadership in Pakatan Harapan. And I must say, looking at the headlines, the Sina paper today about what we've done in the last 23 days, I think I'm quite proud. I'm quite proud. I just, of course, there are certain things, we're still getting used to. We want to wait for the full-fledged cabinet. And the fact that we can talk about it, I think is the biggest testament that people are actually interested and following. And we're going to be helpful reminders to the government indeed. I think, we've done relatively well. Our challenge will be, after the zero rated of GST today, is to ensure that the inelastic prices of goods going down will still follow through, the zero rated regime. It's not going to be easy. So we do need to employ some degree of support. Officers on the ground, that will be a huge challenge. So I think the government is wary and aware of these challenges. Similarly, a lot of the pledges, it will cost a lot of money. So expenditure-wise, is ballooning. But where are we getting revenue? So these are the cost-cutting measures that's going to be employed in different ministries, and sometimes heads will roll. So how do you ensure that the stakeholders that are most deserving do not face any backlash or any cuts?
I'll move on to your father, who has been rumoured to take on the reins of the current Prime Minister. I know...
it's in our statement, but it's
that's
up to
right.
the people.
So is this the case? And on behalf of your father, I know you're not him, but what are his plans from now until then? And is this something that he has envisioned for himself as well? What are his plans in the meantime? And could he be running the show from behind the scenes right now?
I think he has clearly indicated that he is in full support of the Prime Minister and the government. He attended the Presidential Council meeting today as part of Keadilan, as the de facto leader of Keadilan. And I think he is according full respect to the Prime Minister and his cabinet. And the rest of the questioning, my dear, you would have to invite him to come, because I am not Anwar Ibrahim, I am Nurul Izzah.
Please go home and tell him that we want him on the show next week, if he has time. But last week, you were subject of a lot of controversy, or much discussion rather, after a comment was made over your dressing, sparking conversations about...
I was harassed. I mean,
sexual
I think it's
harassment.
Quite yes,
which also got tongues wagging, and rightly so, about existing laws that we have, improving women's rights, something I know you're passionate about, raising the respect bar for women, and in general, empowerment. Where are we so far on that? Because that's also something that's been in the manifesto.
I was rather touched because, when it happened, I was taken aback. Like many victims, usually we always blame ourselves first. And I think that kind of victimizer mode is something that many women experience throughout their lives, whether in school and as they grow up and in the workplace. Now, what really gave me so much strength and encouragement was the backlash that the incident generated. So many women were speaking of their own experiences, and so many people could relate and resonate with the condemnation. And I think that's important because you probably would not have that level of understanding and sensitization if they didn't speak up,
right.
if people didn't condemn the what happened. So I really wanted to take it a step further and say, we have to really look at the sexual harassment laws that are required in this country is insufficient. And certainly, when we talk about women's rights, Islam exalts women. In Islam is very important. The Prophet has always placed importance to address the dignity of women, and regardless, we have always to remember there's going to be private spaces that has to be respected. And I think it's an opportune time for Malaysia that 9th of May didn't just open up this kind of endless possibilities with regards to governance, but also opens up the possibility for us to improve as a people, to have a more gender sensitive culture, a culture that celebrates women, but at the same time understands that you have to have a certain degree of respect to everyone.
That's right. Malaysian women were, of course, the kingmakers at the G14. They made up the majority of the electoral roll. In fact, in 11 states and 2 federal territories, the main voters, or the majority of the voters, were women. They have cast their vote, they've encapsulated their voice for better nation. Housewives, corporate women, they want same things, better wages, they want to be represented, they want equal pay, security, so on and so forth. Manifesto just commit to 5 key commitments, and that starts with 30% of women in the cabinet. Right now we have 3 women ministers in a 14-member cabinet, but that only makes up 21%. So when and how will we see things taking shape and into fruition from the 4 pillars that it's in the manifesto: the education, healthcare, politics and economy?
So I think the Prime Minister will definitely make announcements in the next few phases to complete the cabinet. By the same token, I've just met with the Minister for Women, Family and Community Development, Dato' Sri Tuan Izzah Ismail, and our pledges would have to be fulfilled. I'm encouraged that she's making the announcements with regards to the KWSP EPF contributions by husbands.
That's been put on a bit of a back burner for now.
It is not. She's actually meeting up with the EPF CEO and leadership. And I think that's why when you talk about back burner, it doesn't mean it has to continue. It has to continue. But the issue is the mechanisms in place. Similarly, we talk about women, the issue of empowering women must also be seen in tandem of celebrating women who are not just career-minded, but women who are also homemakers.
Right.
So there has to be a movement to ensure that lives are far more easier and manageable for the average homemaker out there. I think we also look at the other types of policies, gender being factored in the budgetary concerns, and a lot of our microcredit programs is going to be extended further, precisely to address women as the head of households.
Right. The Hope Fund that has garnered about 7 million ringgit in just less than 24 hours and still counting, has also been called out by some sectors as embarrassing, setting a bad precedent, and perhaps started to waver the people's trust. How can we resonate and say that, well, no, it's going to take time, we need this fund? How would you set this straight?
I appeared on Sina, a Facebook live show, and I was asked this question because it was initially initiated by a Malaysian woman, not organised by Pakatan Harapan formally. And I was, I think I was really teary-eyed. I felt that it is very important to appreciate that 7 million ringgit came from people who really wanted a stake in the rebuilding of this country. And it goes beyond the amount per se. It goes to the heart of the commitment that they made to be part of this government, to be part of this initiative. I recall South Koreans in the heydays of the political and financial crisis of 1997 gave up their gold. Some gave up their wedding rings. They just contributed everything they had to save the South Korean economy, which was afflicted by a lot of the crisis. So for me, I think it's an important initiative. Of course, we don't want to overly burden, and people have the right to focus on their livelihood concerns.
Right.
But I would say, sometimes we want to change culture, we want to change mindsets, and we utilize different ways to do so.
What would your conclusion be, or what's your summary with our discussion today? Any parting thoughts for Malaysians watching across the nation today?
Well, I look forward to Jessie making sure this becomes a full-fledged hard talk.
Yes. We are looking into that. Do come back more often, and we will
be grilled again.
pushing that line and that barrier, something we've been wanting to do for a long time here. And here's a reminder to all of you out there to, keep on questioning and keep on having a watchful eye over what happens with the government. If you like something, you don't like something, your voice can be heard, and you will
constructive criticism.
Constructive. That's right.
Berjagalah terus di garis batas perjuangan.
That's right.
That was
Thank
my
you
reminder.
so much for
Thank
being
you.
in the studios with us, YB. Of course,
Sure.
come back anytime. Thanks so much. That's both of us right here on The Nation, right here on Bernama News Channel. Keep it locked on right here for more updates coming your way. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.